Welcome back to Sissy Maya. Make sure to subscribe to our channel to never miss an update. Additionally, consider subscribing to my Patreon to get access to these features, and much more.
Mark Miller stood on the patio deck, staring out at his back lawn on this June Sunday morning. The house and lawn were ready for the Father's Day cookout. Mark sighed. The split-level ranch house in Libertyville and the well-maintained quarter-acre lawn looked fantastic, if he did say so himself, allowing himself a half-smile. It quickly vanished. Yesterday had been a bad day, the culmination of an increasingly bad month. During the preparations for today, he had been moody and standoffish with Kayla, snapping at her once or twice. As usual, he felt terrible about it and apologized at the end of the day. Kayla asked what was wrong, but he couldn't bring himself to tell her the real reason for his behavior. He mumbled something about a bad night's sleep, but it wasn't true, it was Marcy. Marcy, with whom he had a complicated love-hate relationship. Marcy made him feel relaxed and good when he dressed in her nylon and lace-covered clothes. He had often sworn never to deal with her again, even putting her clothes out for goodwill, only to retrieve them later. Marcy was him. Mark was a closet crossdresser. When he dressed up, wig secured, lipstick in place, he became Marcy. He had started young, dressing secretly in his mom's and his sister Sophia's clothes. The interest waned during high school when sports took over. But Marcy resurfaced in college, when his girlfriend Patty suggested he attend a Halloween party dressed as a girl. All the old feelings flooded back, and he reluctantly agreed, going all out to impress Patty. Patty had offered to help, but Mark insisted on surprising her himself. He decided to go all out, aiming for a Cinderella at the ball transformation. On Halloween Day, he drove to Vain Girls in Chicago, known for the best transformations in the area, where Joyce gave him the full treatment. Initially, Patty didn't recognize the beautiful and entirely convincing fairy tale princess at her door. When realization struck, her jaw nearly hit the floor. Later at the party, no one recognized Mark, and the princess had a great time, dancing and flirting with the guys. Stell had taught him how to dance the girls' parts, remember, bro? Ginger did it backwards and in high heels. Mark didn't notice Patty's increasingly disgusted look as she watched him throughout the evening. He won first prize, although he had to remove his wig to finally convince everyone he wasn't just another girl in a princess costume. Afterwards, Mark searched for Patty but couldn't find her. Sharon, the hostess, approached him and delivered a note from Patty. The note was brief. Dear Sissy pervert. To think I ever mistook you for a real man. I thought you'd look funny, maybe a skirt with your combat boots, and a yellow yarn wig. But you are way too good, and having way too much girl fun. You must have done this before, many times. I want nothing more to do with you. Stay away from me, or I'll have Rick, a real man, beat the crap out of you. I'm going home to take a long, long shower to wash the ickiness of you off. You are sick. Mark was devastated. He had believed he was truly in love with Patty. When he met, fell in love with, and married Kayla, he vowed never to tell her about Marcy. For a long time, Marcy had remained dormant. Kayla was the perfect wife and lover, and later, the best mother to their 3 sons, Mitch, David, and Kyle. Mark never desired another woman except, starting about 5 years ago, Marcy resurfaced. During a conference in Omaha, Mark unexpectedly encountered Patty. After an initial awkward silence, Patty broke down in tears and apologized to Mark for her past cruelty. Since leaving college, Patty had worked in a talent agency where she met many individuals from diverse backgrounds. Over time, she realized they were just like everyone else. She expressed deep guilt about her treatment of him that Halloween. They parted not as friends, but no longer as enemies either. Before leaving, Patty gave Mark a photo of him as Cinderella, a keepsake of their complicated past. She remarked that perhaps his better looks that night had contributed to her reaction. Back home, Mark found himself frequently retrieving T's picture. He felt the old desire to dress returning, followed by waves of self-disgust and shame. Hastily, He hid the picture beneath a copy of Gibbon's Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, confident no one in his family would look there. Unable to suppress it any longer, Mark finally called Vain Girls and booked an appointment. The experience was liberating. Joyce shared Marcy's Halloween picture with the other Vain Girls, who were eager to help. Joyce and Jessica dressed him from head to toe in cool nylon undergarments that tingled throughout his body, inducing a surprising sense of relaxation, as if Mark was embracing his true self. They chose a sophisticated outfit suitable for his age, and Joyce applied makeup with sensuous care, using her fingertips. Bethany meticulously did his nails to match his lipstick, while Elizabeth styled his new mid-length blonde wig in a wavy bob that complemented his features perfectly. Marcy was back, and she felt incredible. He was still basking in the afterglow of his lunchy en femme with the Vain Girls when Mark, now back in drab clothing, began his journey back to the suburbs. But as he reached the Eden Spur, feelings of disgust and self-loathing began to set in. How could he continue to do this behind Kayla's back? What if she ever found out? By the time he pulled into his driveway, Mark had sworn never to repeat this again. He stashed his new wig and clothes behind the lawn tractor, confident his sons would never disturb them. This pattern had persisted for the past 5 years. Frustration and moodiness built up as his resolve to abstain from dressing slowly crumbled, leading to a secretive trip to Vain Girls. A few weeks of contentment followed, only for the cycle to start anew. It had been 3 months since his last visit on this Father's Day, yet Marcy's yearning to emerge was relentless. Not today, Mark resolved, not on Father's Day. He sighed, determined to be pleasant, and began preparing the grill. Just then, Sophia's late-model Red Range Rover pulled into the driveway. Dressed in a blue dress and heels, Sophia seemed overdressed for a cookout, but her cover-girl features and unblemished figure at 50 impressed Mark. As she unloaded packages from the car, Mark moved to help her, but his oldest son, Mitch, emerged from the back door. "Hey, Dad," called Mitch. "You go on. I can give Aunt Stella a hand." With the build of a pro football player at 23, Mitch effortlessly handled the large packages. After college, he surprised everyone by taking a teaching job in Phoenix. Arriving yesterday, he stayed in the guest room, lightly decorated by Kayla with feminine touches. Mark chuckled at Mitch's jest about getting in touch with his feminine side, too preoccupied with his own thoughts to consider Marcy's perspective. "What have you got there, Stell?" Mark called out. "Did Bill finally kick you out so you're moving in with us?" They shared a laugh. Sophia's husband, Bill, adored her, and both he and Mark worked as troubleshooters at AT&T Cable TV, forging a strong friendship. "No such luck for you, bro." Sophia chuckled. "Bill will be along later, he just needed to check on some work stuff. This is all Kayla's doing. The boys can give me a hand. You go do your macho male thing with the grill." At that moment, Mark's 2 younger sons came out to assist Mitch. David, 20, a junior at Northwestern, and Kyle, 18, a high school senior, both took after their mother, relatively short at 5 feet 8 inches and 5 feet 9 inches respectively, with slight builds and delicate features. Together, they weighed just a bit more than Mitch, who stood tall at 6 feet 2 inches. People often questioned if Mitch was even related to the other two. "Morning, Dad," they greeted with a wave, joining Sophia to help with the boxes. Mark shook his head, returning to the grill, wondering what Kayla had asked Sophia to bring that required so many large boxes. He didn't notice the other woman, hiding in the back of the Range Rover, slip out and dart into the house. A few moments later, Kayla emerged from the back door and called to Mark that Bill was on the phone. Handing him the pink cordless phone, she knew Marcy liked the pink color, though Mark had to pretend to be annoyed by it. "What's up, you workaholic?" Mark teased as he took the call. As Bill spoke, a frown creased Mark's face, noticed by Kayla. "Trouble at work?" she asked after he hung up. "One of the lines is down," Mark sighed, "and Stan, who usually helps Bill, is out sick. I've got to go in. It's way down on the south side, so it'll take at least 3-4 hours. No time to set up for the barbecue, unless the boys can handle it." The boys. Kayla laughed. They don't know a thing about your precious grill and barbecuing. That's always been Dad's thing. Don't worry, I'll make plans for us to go out to lunch when you get back. Take your cell phone, hun, don't worry about us. Mark kissed her cheek, shouted a goodbye into the house, hopped into his trusty old Nissan pickup, and headed for the south side. An hour and a half later, just past the I-55 exit from the Dan Ryan, his cell phone rang. Mark. Hey, buddy, his brother-in-law's voice greeted him. Good news. Stan showed up, and we got everything sorted. You can turn that rust heap of yours around and head back home to Hearth and family. While annoyed at the prospect of another hour and a half on the road, Mark was relieved it wouldn't be longer and he'd be home by 1 p.m. Traffic heading north on the Edens was heavier than usual, and it was closer to 2 p.m. when he pulled into his driveway. Sophia's Range Rover was parked next to Bill's yellow Miata convertible. As he stepped out, he noticed someone had put the grill away. Entering through the back door, he wrinkled his nose. Something smelled unusual, not unpleasant, but unfamiliar. Mark couldn't quite place it, but Marcy recognized it instantly, a familiar scent of makeup, nail polish, and hairspray, reminiscent of Vain Girls. Mark grew uneasy. What was happening? Marcy, on the other hand, was thrilled. Playtime had begun. Moving almost mechanically, torn between his dual personas, Mark turned the corner into the family room and froze. 6 women, elegantly dressed and impeccably made up, faced him. 2 stood to his left, 2 sat on the sofa, 1 in the easy chair, and another stood to his right, angled away. His attention was immediately drawn to the 2 on his left. Kayla and Sophia looked stunning. Sophia's honey blonde hair cascaded in waves past her shoulders, complementing her red silk jacquard midcalf dress that highlighted her tall, slim figure. Kayla wore a classic knee-length little black dress, sleeveless, with a neckline that tastefully showcased her ample bosom. Pearls adorned her neck, ears, and wrists, complemented by 3-inch patent leather pumps to complete her ensemble. There was no immediate recognition of the 3 seated ladies, except to note that they appeared younger than Stell or Kayla. Or the lady on the left, who was, she turned toward him with a smile on her face. Oh my God. It was Joyce, looking gorgeous in a navy pinstripe suit, her midnight black hair in a French twist identical to Kayla's. It was, of course, Marcy who was noting all these details except for the oh my God, which was from Mark, and was being repeated over and over and over again. What the hell was Joyce doing here? Did Joyce and Kayla know each other? How much did they know about him? About Marcy? He was about to turn and run from the room when the 2 young ladies rose gracefully to their feet. OMG. It couldn't be, could it? They were dressed, made up and coiffed exactly like Kayla, except both were blondes. His worst suspicions were confirmed when the one on his right said, "Hello, Daddy. Normally I'm your son David, but today, I'm your daughter, Crystal, and this," she indicated with a sweep of her arm. Had he just thought she, Mark wondered. "Of course, she," replied Marcy, "is one of your other daughters for a day, my twin sister, Kirsten." Both girls executed perfect curtsies. By this time, Mark's jaw was practically hitting the floor. All 3 older women had big smiles on their faces. But Mark found that he hadn't seen anything yet. Rising slowly but ever so gracefully from the easy chair, rising to her full, majestic, 4-inch heeled, big-haired, 6 feet 7 inches height, was a Rubenesque white Ayupor with what had to be DD cup chest, a corseted waist and very womanly hips, encased in a floor-length purple sequined evening gown with a slit up to mid-thigh. A black boa was draped over her right elbow and left shoulder. Rhinestones in enormous quantities glittered at her wrists, around her throat and from her ears. Just big hair didn't do justice to the wild manner of fiery red curls that cascaded from 6 inches above her forehead out to the edges of her wide shoulders and down to the small of her back, and to rest lightly on her magnificent chest in front. Her face was made up to make any man with even a tiny amount of submissiveness in him want to grovel at her feet. This magnificent creature undulated over to a frozen in his tracks Mark, and ran the end of the boa lightly down his cheek. How do YA like your oldest daughter for a day, Daddy? She managed to imbue the word daddy with a sexiness that was anything but parental. We decided that I should be the flamboyant one. Mitch. Mark stuttered. Dropping the Mae West accent and trying hard to stifle her laughter, the voluptuous Melissa said, "No, Daddy, I'm Melissa today." Taking his arm, Melissa led a bewildered and compliant Mark over to the easy chair, guiding him to sit down. "Take a seat, Daddy, and all will be explained." She stepped back to stand beside her twin sisters. "Mark," Kayla spoke up with a smile for the first time, "you're not being very polite. It's bad enough you haven't greeted me, your sister, or Joyce, but it's also bad manners not to compliment your daughters after they went to such effort to look nice for you." Although, she looked affectionately at Melissa. "Nice hardly captures you, Melissa." Turning back to Mark, she reassured him, "It's okay, honey, we know about Marcy." Though still somewhat in shock, Mark gathered himself. He turned to the younger girls. "Crystal and Kirsten, you both look lovely." He then addressed Kayla, "Just as lovely as your mother." "Why, thank you, dear," Kayla blushed. "Thank you, Daddy," the twins chimed in unison, standing with downcast eyes but twinkling gazes. "And you, Stell," Mark continued, turning to his sister. "You're 4 years older than me, but you look 10 years younger. You're gorgeous, sis." "And you," he exclaimed, turning to Melissa. "My lord, what would the guys on your old varsity squad think? By all rights, you should look like the drag queen from hell, but..." He glanced at Joyce quickly. "You did this. It had to be you." Joyce nodded slightly. "You look stunning, like you're about to step up and win an Oscar. And for that, I deserve one," laughed Melissa. "Back when I was Mitch, I thought just what you thought and wanted nothing to do with this." She gestured along her sides with a sweeping motion. "Then Joyce here said if I did it, and when she finished I felt like the DQFH, she'd pay me $500 and turn me back to normal before you got home. Otherwise, I had to be your darling eldest daughter for a day and pay her. There goes the new VCR I wanted." She grinned at Joyce. "You truly are a miracle worker." Mark chuckled at his oldest son. "I could have warned you never to bet against Joyce, so, Melissa." Finally, Mark turned to Joyce. "Okay, this has to be about me. My secret's out, and Kayla hasn't handed me divorce papers, so what's the deal?" Joyce smiled teasingly. "What? No, hello, Joyce, you look stunning." Then she grew serious. "You better ask Kayla, hun." Mark turned to his wife, feeling a surge of old self-loathing and guilt wash over him, remnants of Patty's impact. He lowered his head in shame. "What do you want, Kayla?" "Divorce." "I'm so sorry. I'll leave. I can pack up in an hour. I know you must feel like you had to embarrass me like this. I deserve it. But, oh God, I love you so much." He began to turn toward the door, tears streaming down his cheeks, when suddenly, he was enveloped in a tight embrace by 10 arms. Joyce, who had anticipated this moment should involve only family, had tears in her eyes as well. "Michael Marcy Miller, don't you dare do this to us." Kayla's voice quivered, tears on the brink. "Do you have any idea how much effort it took to get all of us, especially your children, looking like this? You know it. And you know it will all be ruined if we start crying. Do you want a room full of Marilyn Manson lookalikes?" The thought halted Mark's distraught retreat, and Kayla continued, her voice softened but firm. "I love you, you big idiot. Your children and your sister love you. For the past 5 years, I've watched my once consistently easygoing husband ride an emotional roller coaster, and it's been driving us all crazy. We wanted to help you, but we didn't know what was wrong. About 3 months ago, during one of your better spells, I found a receipt in your leather jacket pocket while taking it to the cleaners. It was from a place called Vain Girls, with paid, Joyce written on it. God help me, I thought you were having an affair. I called Stell. I thought she might have some insight. Mitch was home at the time, remember, and he came into the kitchen." She glanced at Melissa and smiled. "As usual, looking for food." Melissa played her part to perfection. Stepping out of the embrace and standing tall, she peered imperiously down at the other women. We big girls, unlike you undersized ones, need our proper sustenance. That broke the tension. Laughter erupted, even from Mark, and the twins, in perfect unison, looked up at Melissa and declared, "Bitch." At that moment, everyone settled down, and Melissa took the floor. Unaware that Mom was on the line, I asked her about a receipt from a transformation salon. I know vain girls. I used to work at the deli down the block during school, remember? I saw women going in and out all the time. After a while, I noticed more women coming out than going in, and fewer men. So, I started paying closer attention. Joyce is good, but the average woman isn't 6 feet tall, and I noticed a lot of tall women coming out. One day, I walked in and flat out asked, "Do you turn guys into girls?" The blonde at the desk, Jessica, if I remember right, said, "Of course we do, honey." Interested? You'd make a stunning lady. Shaking my head, I just walked out. She paused, then continued, "Look at me now. Was she right, Daddy?" She certainly was. Mark replied, nearly overwhelmed, going with the flow. "Has she seen you as Melissa?" "Oh, yes," Melissa enthused. "She even picked out my outfit. And ours too, Daddy. Bethany did our nails," Crystal added. "And Elizabeth styled our hair," Kirsten chimed in. They had to run back to manage a small private birthday party. Kayla resumed the narrative. Sophia overheard Mitch mention transformation salon. And I blurted out, "Oh my God, he's doing it again." Sophia interjected. "Naturally, your wife asked me what it was, and I'm sorry, Marky, the whole story about our tea parties, dressing up, and playing Barbies came out. I knew, of course, that you were dressing up in Mom's and my things. Didn't you? Well, dear brother, you should have. You left enough clues for anyone to figure out. I had to cover for you to keep Mom from finding out. But I thought you'd stopped by the time I left for college." Sophia had known. Mark had suspected as much. He waited for what would come next. "I called Joyce at Vain Girls, dear. At first, she cited beautician client privilege. This elicited a chuckle from the group. But when I told her what we had already pieced together and how it was affecting our family, she agreed to meet with Sophia and me. She told us about Patty. How cruel of her, dear." Kayla paused briefly, then crossed over to sit on her husband's lap. She wrapped her arms around his neck and looked directly into his eyes, emphasizing each word that followed. "But I'm glad she did it." Seeing Mark's horrified expression, silently questioning why, she softened her tone. "Because, you big silly, now I have you, not her. And I'm not letting you go. I only have one thing to say about this little hobby of yours." "What?" Mark gulped. Asterisk here it comes, asterisk he thought. Asterisk the ultimatum. Stop, or I lose her. Oh my God. Asterisk and he thought it like a prayer. Asterisk what am I going to do, asterisk. If you're going to dress like a woman, you better be stunning and convincing, because I won't be seen with a caricature of a drag queen. Then, with a playful twinkle in her voice, she added, unless the occasion calls for it, of course. Mark couldn't believe his ears. She didn't mind. 1,000 questions raced through his mind, but one had to be asked first. "But what about the boys?" he asked, nodding toward the 3 daughters for a day. "How? Are they crossdressers, dear?" Kayla smiled warmly. "No, although they might be after today. All of them, the boys, that is, are quite taken with the 4 vain girls. The 3 younger ones only, unfortunately," Joyce interjected, smiling. "They seemed to thoroughly enjoy their makeovers," continued Kayla, "and none of them have been able to pass a mirror without looking in it since." The 3 girls, even Melissa, blushed but didn't deny it. "This was their idea, by the way. They love you, and they thought this might be a fun way to show you that you weren't alone. When Mitch approached me with the idea, I couldn't believe that 3 red-blooded American boys would be willing to do it. You know the short and to-the-point answer they gave me when I asked them about it. Mark shook his head. "He's our dad," Kayla quoted. "That's how much they love you, Mark. And I love you enough that I don't care how you dress or whether you call yourself Mark or Marcy. I love you." She threw her arms around him and gave him the most passionate kiss he'd had in quite a long time. A minute or two later, when they came up for air, Mark looked at all of them. "I don't know what I've done to deserve all of you, but I'm too happy to question it right now." "What now? Do I go change into my tux and escort my wife, my sister, my 3 lovely daughters, and—" He turned to Joyce, "my very, very dear friend, to an elegant night on the town?" Suddenly, he was met with 6 shark-like smiles. "Oh, no, dear. Actually, Mark isn't going anywhere at all. We already have a man in a tux to escort us." Just then, Bill, looking splendid in his tuxedo and exuding pride, stepped into the room. "Nope," he declared, "my good buddy and brother-in-law, Mark, had to go elsewhere tonight, but I think I'm going to enjoy escorting his long-lost cousin, Marcy, out on the town. Go get him, girls. I think I'll just head out to the patio and have a beer. Don't want to hear the screams when you start dealing with those bushy eyebrows." Whistling the tune to the Kinks' Lola, he exited the room. The group closed in around a somewhat resistant Marcy. "Happy Father's Day," they all chimed, perfectly in unison. Early the next morning, a weary but content Joyce ushered the other 3 vain girls off to bed. Everyone, including the now liberated and stunning Marcy, had enjoyed a fantastic evening. Plans were already in motion for Kayla and Marcy to shop for a new wardrobe later that day, and Melissa had even arranged a date for Mitch with Jessica. Note, Joyce thought. Find out if Jessica informed Melissa that she, too, was a girl with a little something extra. Pouring herself a cup from the ever-full coffee maker, Joyce settled at her desk. She opened a rather old-looking file book to a page dated October 31st, 1977. Reviewing the brief entry she had made about a boy eager to impress his Halloween date in an unconventional manner, she noted that something had prevented her from finishing the entry at the time. Now, she completed it. Turning to her current file book, under yesterday's date, June 18, 2000, Father's Day, Joyce began 3 new entries. Somehow, she sensed it was wise to leave them unfinished.